knockdown, drag-out trial, lasted 6 weeks.
What happens to Gambino at the end?
He gets convicted.
And for how many years?
10 years.
The next case is Carmine Galante?
Yes.
So tell me about the Carmine Galante
Carmine
case.
Galante was doing 20 years on a narcotics conviction. He was paroled after 12 years. He came back and he became the boss of all bosses, what the mafia calls the capo di tutti capi. And he was very disliked. He didn't share, and he began going back into the heroin business, which was his chief occupation, bringing in heroin through Canada. And we were assigned to get Carmine Galante, and we tried everything, and we could not get a case on him. It was just impossible. One of the things, the FBI was photographing him. I noticed that he would be meeting with various guys in the mafia who had criminal records. And it occurred to me that one of the conditions of parole, he was on parole, was you do not associate with known criminals. So I said, well, let's violate him on parole, let's get a parole revocation warrant, and we'll get him back. And sure enough, I got a parole revocation warrant based on his associating with these various people who the FBI identified as criminals, and we were able to get him indicted for association with known criminals. He resented this. He thought it was really a nonsense kind of indictment, but it worked. And I had to try that case against Roy Cohn. We had a hearing on parole revocation. Galante was sent back to prison. While in prison, we got word that he was under a contract to be murdered in prison. And we have an obligation, the Justice Department, the FBI has an obligation when they know about that to inform the person that there's a contract. He's in jail. I call up the warden, and the warden says, don't worry, we'll put him in isolation in the hole. And that's what they did. Well, Galante did not like that. He called up Roy Cohn. Roy Cohn brought a writ to get him out of isolation. He discounted the whole contract business, thought it was nonsense, and brought a hearing. We had a hearing with a very liberal judge who wanted to know what was the source of our information, that there was a contract. The FBI would not divulge it. The assistant director of the FBI came to the hearing and refused to disclose the origin of the knowledge of the contract. And the judge said, if you're not going to do that, I'm going to release Galante from prison, which he did. 2 weeks later, Galante was executed in a restaurant in Brooklyn by a mafia hit squad. And we were able to find out years later that the reason the FBI knew of the contract was because of the undercover work of Joe Pistone, who was immortalized in the movie Donnie Brasco. And the reason the FBI didn't want to have this come out was because they didn't want to blow the undercover work. It had just begun. He was really making progress. He made over 200 cases.
So let's talk about the case